Sorry for stalling this long, but I'm here with another video that I planned and was supposed to do before the invasion set update, and so to say, I'm finally able to cover the Metal Marauder video on schedule. If you have not watched the other of my black metal weapon set videos that were uploaded a while ago, make sure to watch the most part of the videos, and perhaps I recommend having a good look on the black drum shotgun and the blackout assault rifle. You won't regret how cool those two weapons performed in high-leveled missions. With the right builds and perks, I definitely recommend picking their schematics and try them out. So the next black metal weapon for this series is gonna be our most expensive and also one of my top picks for the black metal set. That is the Metal Marauder, one of the highest base damage rocket launchers in the game, sitting next to the Potshot and the Sodbuster. And what's even better, to make the best out of it, I supercharged it. I have two copies of the Metal Marauder schematics, in which one is physical element and another is fire element, with both have different purposes and 6 perks. The Metal Marauder doesn't come along in the Fortnite Llama, unfortunately, but it comes around annually in the event store at the last couple weeks of the Halloween season. Honestly, having this kind of intimidating appearance in the shop makes it out for the wait throughout the season, so I kind of understand why it had to be in the event store than being a part of the loot set for the event llamas. It is a very powerful, compelling, and expensive weapon, so be sure to pick it up by spending gold before its season rotates out. Since this launcher does have a very high base damage, it really packs a punch and is able to wipe out huge crowds of husks. I had a lot of fun running this weapon. The tiny downfall of this weapon is that it can only have 2 elements. If it were not for the limited selection for its element, it would have made the Santa's Little Helper a substandard weapon like the rest of the rocket launchers in the game. So I have 2 Metal Marauders with different perks. The one I supercharged here is a physical element with the 6 perk. When you stun or knock back an enemy, you lose a small amount for your health and reflect the damage based on your lost health with an explosion. And since it is a launcher weapon, it has more than enough impact to break the threshold and knock back husks, basically dealing more damage at the risk of losing health, but it will only do so every 6 seconds, not constantly. The reload speed perk here is kind of a highly suggested perk if you don't want to wait 3 seconds of shooting one full clip of it. You can change this slot to any other perks if you prefer not reloading, like another crit damage if you want to deal bigger critical hits to complement with the other 2 perks, critical rating and crit damage. Or you could go for overall damage to increase its damage per second, or just generally neutral damage. For the 4th perk, I wouldn't recommend going for fire rate on this launcher for sure. Since you can't increase its mag size, you don't really have that much to fire rockets, and you're only able to use 3 rockets for each singular shot. But that's just my personal approach for this weapon. A 0.75 fire rate is not that bad after all. And lastly, damage to mist monsters and boss. Because of this launcher being one of the highest base damage weapons in the game, and most mist monsters are physical husks like the flingers and blasters, it would deal a devastating damage. Even in higher power level missions, you will not be disappointed. You can as well change the slot of this 5th perk here if you're not only targeting mist monsters. You can have reload speed here, and as mentioned before about having double crit damage, you may also change the perk to having 80% bonus damage based on your missing health. That is also a very useful perk when you have a 6 perk that absorbs your health for damage. It sounds very risky, but in terms of dealing a huge amount of damage to almost any enemies, including big targets, it is worth a shot. While I do know most of you don't really like to lose health and still prefer to be squishy, I have another Metal Marauder that doesn't have that kind of 6 perk. This one's purpose is to purely focus on nature enemies, dealing 44% bonus damage against them, and is also fire element. I have this 2nd copy merely built for crits, having a double crit damage and 1 critical rating and reload speed. Whether this thing is supercharged or not, this weapon will still keep you very happy, and nature husks will not. And now we move on to the loadout I use for this weapon after checking out the perks. Because of how expensive and costly this rocket launcher could be, I am using a Warcry build that deducts the amount of rockets used and keeping it cheap. All that at discount. So anyways, the commander lead here is Star Spangled Headhunter. Her perk gives Warcry the ability to grant 50% chance for every shot to cost no ammo. It doesn't specify which ammo, so that should most likely be every one of them, including the rockets. The team perk Happy Holidays helps reduce the cooldown for any of the abilities by 40%. Very useful team perk because the Warcry cooldown is a huge pain to wait for, which is where Colonel Wildcat's perk comes into fruition. The leadership perk reduces the cooldown of Warcry by 17% in support, and it is able to stack with the team perk. Of course, we're using a decent rocket launcher, so faster explosion perk increases launcher damage by 17%. 8-bit demos perk is almost the same with the lead, but it's exclusively for explosive weapons. When in support, it gives a 20% chance to cost no ammo for every shot. A very good combination with the commander perk and support. And for the last two, perk can be whatever hero you feel like using during your missions. For me personally, I use Ghoul Trooper Ramirez for a longer duration on the Warcry, and Coconuts as a healing source. There are other heroes that you can place in support other than these two. Someone like Steelwool Carlos that increases the Warcry duration for each eliminations up to 15%. Survivalist Jonesy that heals you every eliminations. Chaos Agent to reload your weapon instantly every time you use an ability, and many more that can fit in this loadout. Lastly, if you're suspiciously that rich, doesn't mind spending that many resources to craft stacks of rockets and want to just deal damage either way, you can have Demolitionist Penny on lead for sure. The reason I prefer running a soldier than her as commander is not only because of the damage, but it's for the class perks. While the constructor class perks could not do much with weapons in general, soldier on lead is basically a better choice in my opinion. Their two class perks are Suppressive Fire and Stay Frosty. Suppressive Fire may sound that it doesn't add up that much, but shooting consecutive shots on the same enemy stacks the 3% damage buff is super useful, especially against big targets. Being a factor of my Supercharged Metal Marauder previously shown its perks, and Stay Frosty increases 10% of ranged weapon damage and weapon stability by 35% for a period of time. A very good buff, especially for a rocket launcher build. I mean, honestly, with either of Demolitionist or Star Spangled for lead, the Metal Marauder deals more than enough weapon damage towards power level 250 husks and mist monsters. So in any case, certain loadouts like this one for example will still do great regardless. This weapon is an absolute destructive force that hits with an iron fist. Make sure to pick it up whenever it's in the event store. You will not regret upgrading it, and it's worth your time to try it out with or without a built-in loadout. That's all for the overview. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care of yourself and love yourself.